How's it going, y'all? And welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about domain and range and how we actually write out the domain and the range for a equation or for a graph. So first of all, we're going to go over the definition. So domain is all the values or numbers of x for a given equation or a graph. And range is all the values or numbers of y for a given equation or graph. You'll notice that I did color code them. There is a reason behind that. So domain will always be the x values, and range will always be the y values. And so these are our two definitions, and we'll see you back in a second for the different ways of writing out domain and range. So in this part, we're going to talk about ways to write out domain. Now, there are three different ways to write out domain. There's interval notation, there's inequality, and then there is set notation. So for the first way, for interval notation, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking for the lowest x value and the highest x value. So we're just going to be looking at this pink highlighter along the x-axis, and we're going to look for how low does the x values get, and we'll just follow the graph over to the left, and we'll see that the furthest to the left this graph ever gets is -2. So that's our lowest value. And now for our highest value, it isn't directly crossing the x-axis, so we're going to have to do a little bit of investigating. So we're seeing that the graph goes all the way to the right, and it stops right here. So this is the lowest, or the highest, I apologize, the highest x value this graph will ever get. Now it's not directly touching the x-axis, so what we're going to do is we're going to draw a line from that point to the x-axis to see what x value that this point has. And if we draw that line, we see that 4 is the highest. So we know the lowest is -2, the highest is 4. Now for the interval notation, we're going to have to use either a bracket or a parenthesis. Now I drew up a little table to kind of help us out to see which of either the bracket or the parenthesis we need to use. Now if the number's included, we're going to either use the bracket, the greater than or equal to, or the less than or equal to, and the solid dot, or filled in dot, however you want to think about it. And then for the next row, doesn't include the number or the value, we have a parenthesis, the greater than or the less than, and then a hollow dot. Now, the hollow dot and the filled dot are what the graph would look like. So we're going to look on the graph to see which one of these is on that graph. Now, if we go back and we look on both the -2 and the 4, we have that filled in dot, so that we know, since it's filled in, for both of them, we're going to use the bracket. So the bracket will close both of them in, so we know that the x value goes from -2 to +4. So now we're going to talk about the inequality. Now when you think of inequalities, you should think of less thans and greater thans, less than or equal to and greater than or equal to. So based on the two numbers we use, we know that the numbers aren't going to change. We know that it's going to be -2 and 4. But now we need to figure out whether or not we need to use greater than or equal to or greater than. So we'll go back. And now remember, we used the bracket already, and it also has a filled in dot, so that we know for the inequality we're going to have to use the greater than or equal to and the less than or equal to for both. Now, if one of those had a hollow dot, we would just use the greater than or the less than, depending on which number it was. So this reads x is greater than or equal to -2, but less than or equal to a +4. Now for our last way of writing out domain, we're going to use set notation. And to help us out with set notation, we're going to take a look at this table. Now you might remember from the last assignment, we did have to find out domain from the x and y, or the x values, and the range from the y values. So for our domain, remember that's x, we list out all the values from greatest to least. So we find the smallest number, so the smallest is -2, and then we're just going to go up, so -1, 0, +1, 2, 3, and 4. So all we have to do for set notation is just list off the values. So I hope this helped with the ways to write domain. We're going to look at the ways to write range next. Now we're going to talk about the ways to write out range using interval notation, the inequality form, and set notation. So you'll notice I color-coded it with the green along with the y-axis. So now we're going to be looking for the lowest y value and the highest y value. So remember, we're looking up and down. So you'll notice that none of the points for the lowest and the highest cross the y-axis, and that's okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the lowest point, which is right here. And we're going to take it and we're going to draw a line to the y-axis to figure out what our lowest point is. So if we draw a line across, we see -3 is our lowest. We'll go all the way to the top to our highest point, and we'll draw a line to the y-axis to see what point it is. And the highest is 4. So we'll write out our two numbers, -3 and +4. And so remember, for interval notation, we need to use either the bracket or the parenthesis. And remember, both of these are solid dots, so we'll check our table. So filled or solid dot, we need to use a bracket. Since both of them are solid dots, we use a bracket for both. So now we're going to talk about the inequality form. So I'll rewrite our two numbers, those don't change. And since we're talking about range, we use the y. And now we need to double check to make sure we either need to use the greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. So with a filled dot or bracket, we need to use less than or equal to and greater than or equal to. And now remember, we need to make sure they face the same or the right direction. So this reads y is greater than or equal to -3 and less than or equal to 4. And then for our last way of set notation, that's where we're going to look at the table. This table is from the graph, so we took off the points. So we're just going to find the lowest y value. Now remember, it may not be the top number, so we have to look a little bit. We see that -3 is our lowest value. So we'll start with that y value first. And then we'll slowly go up. So we see that 0 is our next number, 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So we're just listing off the y values in order. And now we have our set notation. So I hope that this has helped with a little refresher of domain and range. And I'll see y'all in the next video. See y'all.